the dark night, trigger full of bets till the dawn's light. Bravado whispers, third tips to the air. Counter at cashing tickets without a care. Saturday vibes got me feeling this way. Money lines dancing in the morning rays. Spread the word and spread the odds high. Cup of coffee parlays, time ticks by. Cash it in, the crowd rolls out. Football Saturdays make us proud. Bet it out, we won't think twice. Once we hit big, the game's our vice.
Yes, sir! It is Saturday morning, baby. Let's go! What's going on, everybody? This is GunzPicks, and this is Saturday Mornings with GunzPicks. I'm the host of the most, this point guard of podcasting, the self-proclaimed CFB GOAT himself. And you are here live watching Saturday Mornings with GunzPicks. Listen, we have two guests waiting in the room. I want to make sure I introduce them properly before we get started, but we need to get to the cup of coffee parlay so we can get talking about the top 25 slate. We're jumping into it right now, baby. Let's go. I think last week we had an 8-teamer. It didn't hit because we missed one game, and we're going to hit this one. Listen, cup of coffee means you're only spending a cup of coffee here. We're straight bettors. We ain't parlay guys, but people want the parlays. I'll give you a parlay. Give me Wisconsin money line, Indiana money line, Texas State money line, Michigan money line, Cal money line, New Mexico money line. I love New Mexico today versus Utah State, and Arkansas money line, and give me Texas on the way. Plus 2,666 is the parlay. That's going to be the cup of coffee parlay. And if I'm not going to give you one, I'm going to give you two. Let's do a double doggy, baby. Triple doggy on this one. UConn money line, Auburn money line, Arkansas money line for a plus 912. Parlay. We've been absolutely cooking on college football. We're going to hit the parlays. And if you get into the comment section and we hit one of these parlays, you say, Guns, I tailed. I'll send you $50 to one of the random commenters on this video. All right, let's get our guests into the queue. We're going to start this off with a guy that's been on here a bunch of times. He is a regular on the show. He's been absolutely killing it at hitting the books on YouTube. You may know him as @BoBanoBets. Is my man Ian. What's going on, my friend? How you doing this beautiful morning?
Good to be back with you. I'll say this about the Hitting the Book show with Connor Mack on Mondays. It's one of the best shows I do, along with probably the hockey show. But, you know, it's an early week look. We pick apart the majority of the board in college football, the weeknight games, the marquee Saturday games. It's a lot of fun. It really does help me. I feel I do a better job with my results because of doing that show on a Monday every week. So it's a good show. Appreciate you mentioning it. And it's great to be back here on Saturday morning.
Hell yeah. I love talking ball. Let's get our other guest in here. This is the first time he's actually been on the Saturday Mornings with GunzPicks show, but he's done some content with college basketball with me in the past, and I called him up. I said, Trig, can you come on the show? And he says, I can. And now he is in the building. You may see him on Wager Talk and all videos and all the work that he's doing over there. It is Adam Trigger. What's going on, my friend?
What's up, Guns? I'm glad I can make it this morning. It's good to see you. It's been a while. Good to see both of you guys.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we're going to be breaking down the top 25 from the top to the bottom. We'll see if we can all fit it in an hour before kickoff. And we're just going to get it rolling. But before we get it rolling, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so for the GunzPicks channel, because we do this information for the low price of $0.00. And all we need is thumbs up to the video. All right, let's jump into the first game on the board here. We got a good one here in the ACC. And Trig told me backstage he's been honing in on the MAC and the ACC. So let's see if he's got an opinion on this one. Number 6, Miami, going on the road to face Louisville in a pound of flesh game for Miami, losing the game last year. And they're coming off a bye week, off a narrowly escaping the jaws of defeat in Berkeley. But this is a new game. This is a new day. I'll start with you, Ian. What do you think about Miami versus Louisville?
So what I like the most in this game is the total. I like over the total. It's moved from 59 to 61. Miami's offense has been pretty much unstoppable all year. You look at the bigger games on their schedule. They obviously shredded Florida. A little bit of a sluggish start making that West Coast trip to Cal, but once they got that offense going in the second half, very difficult to stop. Obviously balanced. They can run it. They've got Cam Ward. They've got Xavier Restrepo. It's just a great offensive line as well. Louisville, the more I watch their defense, they lost a lot. That was a good defense last year. If you remember Jeff Brom and that Louisville team that was one of the ACC heavyweights last year, that defense was probably one of the better ones Jeff Brom's had on any of his teams between Louisville, Purdue, and Western Kentucky, all the teams he's coached. I think that was one of his better defenses. They lost a lot early in the year. I think they feasted on some weaker teams, but now as they're facing better competition, SMU went up and down the field against Louisville's defense, struggled at times last week, barely escaping Virginia on that side of ball. So I think Miami can have success. Miami's defense is pretty good, but we've seen even them the last couple of weeks, Virginia Tech and Cal, move the ball. And if there's one weakness for them, it's their secondary. And it plays right into the strength of Louisville's offense with Tyler Shuck in that passing game, because I think they're better throwing it this year than running it. So I like the over in this game. If you made me take the side, which I don't like as much, I'd actually lean a little to Louisville here as a home underdog in this spot. But I'm telling you what, I feel like it's one of those games too. Miami could win it by 7. I definitely prefer the total.
Can't talk you off the total on that one. Kind of like that over myself. Adam, Trigger, what are your thoughts? Miami, Louisville.
Yeah, I think the number's probably right around where it should be. I wish I got in. Well, I don't know that I ever really wanted action on this game, but I would have liked to have like Miami -4. I thought about it earlier in the week. Of course, now it's up to 5.5. In hindsight, that's a bet I would like to have. I didn't bet it, so I'm not going to bet it now. 5.5 kind of feels right. I do think Miami is the superior team here. So I told you, Guns, like the reason I focus on the ACC and the MAC is just to make it scalable for me. I do so much with baseball, and then I'm into college basketball that I have to make football. I don't want to be just firing off college football plays just for the sake of it. So I live in Syracuse, or right outside of Syracuse. The ACC is kind of my conference, if you will. And I listened to a lot of like local Syracuse stuff. And Kyle McCord said something earlier this year that I thought about. I've been thinking about a lot as I see the travel that we have now in the ACC. Remember, this is obviously new. These West Coast road trips are new to these ACC guys. And something he said was, man, like, I'm so thankful that we have the week 3 bye, because remember, they grind all summer. They play those couple early games. And so you talk about a team like Miami, that some of that trip to Cal and then almost losing that game had a lot to do with, I think, just being tired, right? Like they didn't have a bye. They played, I believe, the first 6 straight weeks of the season. And then on week 6 to have to go all the way out to the West Coast and play a college game day game is a tough ask. So you get them coming off a bye here. That's something I do like for Miami. I think it was needed. You got to go back the week before. People forget that like Virginia Tech's still a very good football team. I know Miami was like a massive favorite in that game, which I still thought was crazy. And obviously the final result suggests that, but that was like a Friday night, big time, primetime game. So you go Friday night, big time game, college game day game. Now you get a week off. I think you get one of Miami's best efforts here. And I'm with Ian. I think 7 or more. I think Miami kind of wins this game. Louisville did not impress me last week against Virginia. I thought they were fortunate to win that game. Kind of like Miami to get it done here.
I kind of like Miami in the first half. I was like looking at this as a breakdown here. When you look at Miami, though, granted, first half, last 2 conference games, they've trailed Virginia Tech and Cal exclusively here, but Louisville really hasn't blown people out in the first half either. You look at Notre Dame, SMU, tied with the UVA at the half in the last 3 games. So with Louisville, I'm not high on them on the season anyway, so maybe I'm a little bit biased when I'm talking about fading Louisville here. But Miami coming off that bye, coming well rested, kind of almost took a punch in the mouth on the road, big road win on the West Coast. But I think they come off this bye and they come out swinging in the first half. They're going to be able to pass the ball against this Louisville team, and that's kind of what they want to do. I think they'll abuse that, and they'll come up running here with Cristobal and the boys and Cam Ward. First half is the way I would go with this one. It's kind of weighted to that side anyways in the first half, most of the line. I think it was like 60% of the line on the opening line. Now it's moved up to 5, kind of balanced itself out, but -2.5, -3 on the first half. That's probably the way I'd like to go with that one. All right, next game on the board as we're flying down the slate. And we got Shockey in the building. He loves the first half in Miami. And also Louisville 0-3 at home first half versus FBS opponent.
I got a quick question for you guys before we move on from this one. Do you think Louisville's at a disadvantage with this being at noon? Like, would you like it more if this was like an 8 p.m. game there?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Oh,
I
yeah,
probably would. Yeah.
I would agree with
I think
that.
that helps Miami a little bit.
The bye helps from a rest standpoint. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Does the bye help from a coaching standpoint? This ain't Andy Reid off a bye week here now. This is Mario Cristobal off a bye week. We'll see how it goes. But obviously, there's been in the dubious coaches category, he's high up there for me.
Yeah. I think there's times that I'm not high on Miami. I think the stock's going to drop on their price here pretty quickly, but I don't think it's this spot because you're playing another team that I think is overvalued in the market too in Louisville. But we'll see how it goes there in that game. And let's go to the next game. Speaking of ACC, let's keep going with the ACC. Virginia going on the road, face number 10 Clemson. Listen, Clemson can score points at home. They're going against a Virginia team that can score points on the road. I mean, this is kind of one of those situations that I'm leaning towards the over on this one. Like the team total here with Clemson as well at 38.5. That's a high indicator. We're probably going to see a lot of points over 40 with Clemson. I'll start with you this time, Adam. What are your thoughts? Clemson versus Virginia.
Yeah, I think the over makes sense. Now, I actually was pretty close with taking the 21 points with Virginia here. This was a play that was close for me. Like, I didn't add it, but it doesn't mean that I don't like it. I think if this trended, so go back a couple weeks, Clemson played Stanford and they hosted Stanford and the line kind of got out of hand in that game where it got bet up to almost 24 and a half. I was really hoping that was what was going to happen here because I think at that number, I would have been forced to just jump in with Virginia. My handicap says Virginia. My number makes this more like Virginia 18 and a half. So I do think at 21, there's still some line value here. The reason I kind of agree with the over, and I think it's going to be Virginia points that help it get there, is they should be able to move the ball against Clemson, especially if this gets into a garbage time scenario. So Clemson first half point margin has been as high as any team in the league this year, right? Like if you take out even the Georgia game, they didn't get killed in the first half. The next 5 games, every game they've been up huge at halftime. There has been a ton of garbage time minutes for this Clemson defense, and they give up points in these garbage time scenarios. So you got to think, Guns, if this is a 20-point spread and it gets to that, like I'll take Calandria against their little zone defense, trying to, I think he can make plays against that regardless. But if this is a scenario where it's a 20-point game, he's probably marching Virginia down the field here. So I think Virginia hangs around here. I think the number was about right. Like, I don't know if I want to poke the bear at this point because I do think Miami and Clemson are far superior than the rest of the teams in this league, which is not a very good league this year. As much as I would like it to be as an ACC guy, not a very good league this year. These aren't teams that are on the level of like some of the other top teams in the league. But in the context of the ACC, Miami and Clemson seem to be the 2 best, and Clemson can move it. So, reluctantly, though, I still think Virginia is the right side here. And if Ian likes the over, it kind of makes sense that Virginia is kind of helping out in that regard.
Yeah. Ian, your thoughts?
Yeah, I like the over but I did grab Virginia 21. There was 21s early in the week. I know it was right on that number. I think it's 20 and a half mostly right now, but I thought at 21 it's worth a look. Look, they were 4-0 against the spread as road dogs down the stretch last year. Virginia. You look at Boston College, they covered. They won outright at North Carolina. 3-point loss in overtime to Miami last year. Took Louisville down to the wire. All as big dogs last year, this Virginia team on the road. They haven't been a road dog this year. They have been a home dog, of course, last week against Louisville, and they did cover that number. So, I look at this as I think it is a few too many points. It's not easy to step in front of Clemson, but because Clemson's been ripping it up offensively, that's why we're getting a bigger number of points here with a team like the Virginia Cavaliers. So, and I like Calandria. I'm glad Calandria got the quarterback spot over the Musket man, Tony Musket there for Virginia. I just think he was the better option. I think he's kind of proven that. I think there's just a little bit better arm strength and accuracy from Calandria. I think it's made a difference. Defense is still sketchy. It's why I like the over, because I think Clemson is going to score here. It's been an offense that's been damn near unstoppable since the Georgia game. It's funny, everyone buried the offense after the Georgia game, and they haven't been stopped since then. So I like the over, and I have a smaller bet on Virginia plus the 21 as well.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, I think the total is the way you got to attack this one.
Yeah.
The two teams are night and day when it comes to how they perform on the road versus home. You have UVA at home; they average 23 points per game. On the road, they average 37 points per game. Granted, those teams they played on the road were Wake Forest and Coastal Carolina. And if you just go look at the stats on those teams give up a lot of yards and a lot of points. And then you got Clemson, though. This is why I like the Clemson team total on this one, because on the road, 27 points per game, and then at home, they average 55 points per game. And that was against App State, NC State, and Stanford in that sample size. I don't think there's much difference there with UVA. UVA has given up a lot in the passing game as well. On the road, they give up 353 yards to their opponents on average in the passing game. And then you have Clemson that has put up 250 yards passing or more in 5 straight games. And the only game they didn't was UGA in week 1. 10th, Clemson also 10th in offensive scoring, 41 points per game, 55 points per game at home, like I said. And then you have UVA, they give up 23.8 points per game overall to their opponents, 50th in the country in that stat, and then 27 points per game on the road. I just feel like it's going to be a track meet. I think it's going to be a little back and forth. And Clemson playing at home, they've put up a ton of points, and I think we get it here. I like the over 38.
41-24. That's what it feels like to me.
Absolutely. They will get over 40, in my opinion. Of course, picks from Dave trolling the chat says, Guns, Ian, Guy, and strangely unfurnished room. What up, dude?
I know I'm doing that this week. That's actually my goal this week. So I moved my office down to my basement, which is we don't have, I mean, it's redone because the previous owners redid it, but like I don't have anything down here. So normally on Wager Talk, I got the green screen, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, I've been in. So Joe Ranieri was like, Trig, your basement looks like the stock backdrop. He's like, this literally looks like one of these stock backdrops we use. He's like, just go with it without it. And everyone's like, he's in the unfinished room. But then again, half the time I'm on Wager Talk, there's like a ladder with paint behind me, right? It's like some ridiculous backdrop. So I'm like, what do you want here? But I'm gonna set something nice up. So this will be temporary.
Yeah, I like the depth perception. It's almost like I'm looking at a Stanley Kubrick movie or something like that with that angle. But let's go into the next game here. This is a team I love and adore. Indiana. Kurt Signetti says, I win, Google me. And goddamn does he win. He's undefeated going against the Nebraska team here. It's 5-1 Nebraska team and a 6-0 Indiana team. I lean towards Indiana because it's just they've just been a cash machine, and I think they continue to be. I'll start with you, Ian. What are your thoughts, Nebraska, Indiana?
Yeah, I'll keep it brief. I've been on Indiana all year. I'll keep riding it. Although I am concerned. I mean, Nebraska's got a respectable defense. It's going to be a bigger challenge for my fellow Canadian, and he's playing great. And Curtis Rourke, he's been absolutely phenomenal for this football team. He's actually going to be even better maybe than his older brother, Nathan, because I actually think there's probably a higher ceiling now for Curtis Rourke with what we've seen from him. But this is going to be one of the better defenses Indiana's played. But I think the home field matters. They're going nuts. I've got it in front of me, this big noon kickoff. They're going wild here in Bloomington. This is such a huge game for them, for that program as well. They haven't had a big game type of setting like this in a very long time.
Yep.
Indiana. And I'll be honest, I'm Dylan Raiola. I didn't love what I saw against Rutgers. I didn't from that offense. I think it was probably his worst game. And if they're going to play like that against Rutgers here today, I don't know if they're going to stay within a score of this Indiana offense that I think could have break out eventually. It's one of those deals. Nebraska's defense is good enough to hold. And if they're not going to get enough from their offense, eventually that's a defense that's going to get worn down potentially later in the game. So at less than a touchdown, I laid it with Indiana.
Adam Trigger, your thoughts?
My thoughts are this. I hope Ian wins because I really want to play Washington next week. Okay. Like that's probably the spot to go against Indiana. It'll be like, especially if they win and they win by margin here, big party in Bloomington. They don't have to travel. So they'll kind of, it's kind of like probably permeate throughout the week because they'll be home next week as well. And then you're probably talking about a very inflated number, going into that Washington game, Washington coming off a bye. As far as this one's concerned, there is some merit to the only way I think you could justify Nebraska here, in my opinion, is being the person that just has to bet against the team that keeps covering, right? Because there is that, right? And I think people cashed like that last night with Oklahoma State a little bit, like BYU. You kind of knew they were going to not cover at some point. And of course it did happen. So I'm not saying that that's a horrible strategy, but I think you're on the wrong side of 7 with the number here. And of course, 7's a key number. So yeah. Indiana 6.5 feels like the right play from a numbers perspective. like I said, selfishly, I hope they smash so I can come back and play Washington at like the best number possible next week.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at these two teams, they're kind of going polar opposite directions here as far as what their scheduling situation is. You got Nebraska on the first leg of a road back-to-back. They got Ohio State on deck, and then Indiana is on the first leg of a back-to-back home stretch, and they got Washington on deck, like Adam was talking about. Not a lot of history with these two teams at all. I think they played 3 times in the last 8 years or something like that. So I don't really have a revisionist history or any kind of revenge angle on this one. But Indiana really hasn't been tested at all. This is a big test for them, kind of the barometer of how good this team really is. The only real true toughest game so far was Maryland. And I don't think Maryland is a tough team at all. And then Nebraska's had some tests along the way getting to this game. Of course, Illinois lost that one Friday primetime. Colorado and Rutgers. I think the game is going to be decided simply, can Indiana's offense move the ball versus the Nebraska defense? It'll be the best defense that Indiana has seen all year. Indiana also has hit the over last 5 times, where Nebraska is an under team 5 out of the last 6. So I can't really talk about the total at all. It's a heat check for both teams. Who are they? Are they good? Are they bad? Are they, just beating lower level competition? But when the step up in class happens, they kind of crumble like a cheap suit. I think Indiana, coaching wise, I like the situation with Cignetti very much more than I like it with Matt Rule. I'm going to the Indiana side on this one. They're the home team. I think they get it done, and then they actually show who they really are. We already hit their team total over. It's 5.5. That was easy money, hit in 6 weeks. So let's continue with the Cignetti train. Choo choo. Let's go to the next play here. SEC action. We have Auburn going on the road to face, Auburn going on the road to go face number 19, Missouri Tigers here at 12 p.m. kick. Auburn, I don't know about the coaching situation there. I think Hugh Freeze is kind of, he's panicking a little bit by the performance of his team so far, not scoring a lot of points at all. And they're going against a Missouri team that may be a little bit hungry after getting shellacked. Well, actually, they came off the win to UMass, and then they got shellacked by Texas A&M, but they're getting back in conference play. I will start with Ian. What do you think about this game?
Yeah, I'm not a real strong opinion, but I'm a very high volume bettor. So my not a real strong opinions do end up usually being very small bets. That's just the approach I usually go with. But I did grab a little Missouri once this line fell. I know it's Auburn off a bye week. They probably have the better defense, but I don't know. I'm seeing fraud and I'm seeing all this stuff being thrown around about Missouri just because of the A&M game. And it was a brutal game. They were absolutely whipped. They were absolutely destroyed. I feel it's a little bit of a discount now on Missouri at home. I don't trust the offense, or I don't care who it is, Hank Brown, Peyton Thorne at this point. There's just been zero consistency from the offense for Auburn. And if you're going to go on the road in the SEC and win, I don't care how good your defense is, you got to eventually put some points on the board. Can Auburn do that? We'll have to wait and see. I know it was UMass last week, but still it was good to see Missouri absolutely throttle that team, show no sign of hangover or down in the dumps, woe is me after the A&M game. I think that's a positive. So small bet on laying it with Missouri, but nothing I'm overly strong with.
Adam Trigger, your thoughts, SEC action.
4 weeks ago, I couldn't have gotten enough on Missouri at this number, right? Like before that Texas A&M, but really before the Vandy game. I mean, I thought Missouri was going to have like a top 15 defense this year. Like I thought they were that good defensively coming into the season. Those back-to-back shutouts, obviously Murray State, Buffalo, not great teams, but still not giving up a point on that game. I ended up on the wrong side of Missouri in the BC game, where they let BC move the ball far more than I thought they should have. I thought they should have had a much better defensive game plan for Castellanos in that game. They didn't. And, kind of like since then, hasn't been that impressive. I mean, they barely beat Vandy. They give up 41 to Texas A&M, but I'm kind of with Ian where it's like, last week was a little bit of a get right spot. They only allowed 3 points to UMass. That to me is like the takeaway from that game. I would have been like discouraged if they came out and it was like 50 to 20 something, but the defense, like it almost felt like they made a point to not, they wanted to get right on the defensive side of the ball. They give up 3 points. UMass is a little bit better than they've been in years past. Like they're a little less incapable than they've been in past years. So that's still a good result for them. I think the spread was like 27 in that game, and they crushed it. So I kind of like I still am not very high on Auburn. I don't think this team is very good. So, coming back home now, I think this will be their first home game since the Vandy game, about first home game in a month. Kind of with Ian. I think the buying the dip there makes sense. 3.5 feels light for this number. Not a play that's going to make my card, but I could only just lay the points with Missouri here. Feels like the right spot for them.
Yeah, I'm not in the business of betting Auburn at any point this year. But you have an Auburn team coming off a bye, 3 straight conference losses, 2-4 in the year. Their only wins were Bama, A&M, and New Mexico. Not the greatest wins in the world. They've really struggled scoring here, and this is kind of probably why I'm leaning towards this direction on a play. 14 versus Cal, 14 versus Arkansas, 21 versus Oklahoma, and 13 versus UGA. This is pretty alarming considering they won the yardage battle versus Arkansas and Oklahoma as well, but they stayed even in the yardage with UGA and still couldn't put up points. So this team is just kind of they can move the ball, but they can't score points is kind of alarming to me. Then you have a Missouri team that's ranked 15th in the country in opposing scoring, 17th in opposing yards per game. Auburn's ranked 97th in offensive scoring and 52nd in offensive yards per game. The team total sitting here at 23.5. I think when you look at the 4 the FBS schools that they face in conference too, they've just hit all of these have gone under this total. So why wouldn't I consider taking the team total under here for Auburn at 23.5? I think that's the way we play this one. I don't see them scoring anywhere near 21, considering I just think Missouri's a lot better team than Cal and Oklahoma for that matter. So yeah, that's probably the way I would treat this one. And Ian has a heart out. He's got a show he's got to prepare for.
The ice guys, unfortunately, I'd stay for the whole hour, but it's the way it goes, unfortunately.
Yeah, he's the mover and the shaker. He's got NHL. He's got to get the pucks going. But we'll give him the floor. Tell them where they can find you on all social media platforms.
Well, at Bobano Bets, all the shows but let's get some best bets out there since I can't stay for some of the other games that I'm liking here today as far as there's 2 underdogs I think can win outright. I'll give you 2. North Texas against Memphis, Houston against Kansas. Houston is going to be a better offense with Zion Chris, I think, at quarterback because Donovan Smith couldn't play. He was that bad. And Willie Fritz is a great coach. That team's going to get better as the season goes on. And we know Kansas can't close. Week after week, Kansas has blown leads. Kansas has had horrible fourth quarters that have cost them football games. What's going to change here? And you have Houston off a bye week. Kansas's offense has fallen down. Daniels hasn't had the year we thought. The defense has suffered. I think Houston's very live. I think Memphis, to me, the more I watch Memphis, what's their signature win? The Florida State game? I mean, last week against South Florida, everything conspired against South Florida. They had their backup quarterback who was terrible, Bryce Archie. They had to move the game to Orlando because of Hurricane Milton and the destruction that was done with that. And that was a very lethargic, pedestrian, unimpressive performance, in my opinion, from Memphis. I think North Texas, so many people not talking about how good this team is, especially on offense with Chandler Morris. He's been absolutely phenomenal. I think it's too many points. I think North Texas gave Memphis a game last year too. So I think North Texas is live in that game. And the big game, guys, Georgia, Texas. I think Texas wins. I'm not crazy about the point spread cover, but I think that's an over. I agree with the move up in the total. It's one of my favorite overs of the whole card. It's actually the biggest game of the day, Georgia, Texas. Georgia, offensively, we know Carson Beck company can move it. That defense, though, let's be real. The one really great offense they played was Alabama, and they got shredded. They haven't played a really good offense outside of that. And look, last week, Mississippi State, the Van Buren boy, give us the sign. And that's not the sign. It was when I was banging Mr. Van Buren last week from Mississippi State. Like the Seinfeld reference there.
Oh, I do. I love a good Seinfeld reference.
But Mississippi State moved the football against that Georgia team last week. So I think Texas is going to have a lot of success moving it. But here's the thing with Texas's great defense, and I think they are a great defense. But the 2 signature wins everyone's pumping their tires over, Michigan and Oklahoma, nowhere near the offenses, in my opinion, that Georgia's going to bring to the table today. So I really do like the over in that big game tonight.
That's beautiful. And go check him out on Hitting the Books. Like he says, he breaks down the entire slate with Connor Mack picks, a regular on this show as well. But we'll get him out of here. He's got pucks to cap. Good
Adam,
to
good to
you.
see you. Guns, good to see
to
you.
see
Good
you
luck
too.
today.
Absolutely. Let's get him out of here. Wow. We're having ourselves a show, and I love a good Seinfeld reference for the Van Buren boys. He was holding the salt shaker. There we go. All right, let's go to the next play here. This is probably a short talk play, but it's East Carolina going against Army. Army on a tear right now ranked team. Statistically, just looking beautiful, but scheduling wise, they've just played bad team after bad team in most of these cases. I'll start with you, Adam. You got any thoughts on East Carolina versus Army?
I do have thoughts here. So I grew up Capital Region, going down to Army games. If you've never been, first of all, Guns, we got to get you to an Army game. Have you ever been to Mitchie Stadium?
I have,
You ever
yeah.
been
I
there?
actually, my
Phenomenal.
the company that I work for, we looked at a job over there, like I want to say 10 years ago. So I've walked that entire campus.
Oh, the campus is incredible.
Mhm.
Game day there is incredible. I can't wait till they renovate the place. It's going to be
The
awesome.
castle,
But
man, it's just a big castle. It's like
it-
very medieval times walking through there.
it's such a cool campus. The whole area just beautiful, especially this time of year. Awesome. But big favorite at home historically, like laying points at home to FBS schools historically has not been a good spot to back Army. So, the way that their schedule works out, like they obviously put together their schedule, at least historically they put
Right.
together their schedule, and usually the home games they'll end up with one or two like really good home games where they're an underdog. I know I went and saw them as a dog against Sam Hartman a couple years ago in Wake Forest.
Mhm.
And they tend to do well in those. And then they'll smash an FCS school or like a total just, they always have like this year they opened with Lehigh. They always smash that team. But most of the games are pretty competitive. And the ones where they're the big favorite like this, Guns, historically do not work out well from a spread covering standpoint. So that would cause me to lean toward East Carolina a little bit, because you have to wonder, as good as this Army team has been, like they're also a candidate to not cover one of these big numbers at some point.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you go back past years, they've always struggled as like the touchdown or more favorite at home. They have, like, you can go back. I can think of them off the top of my head where I think Louisiana Monroe came in maybe last year and played well, or there was I don't remember offhand, but I know if you go back the 3 or 4 previous years, 7 or more point favorite at home, they're not always great against the number. This year, they've just beat everyone. Rice. I was on Rice in that game, thinking Rice had a great chance to maybe come in and pull the outright upset. No chance. They destroyed them. UAB, 44-10. No chance. But again, that UAB team's not good. Army was almost a 4-touchdown favorite in that game. East Carolina to me is just good enough. They're a little bit better where I think they could hang around here, and maybe this is on the wrong side of 17. So I lean toward the Pirates. Not something I'm going to bet, but I am looking for my spot to jump in and fade Army at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I was high on ECU from the beginning of the season. I thought this was a team total over. I thought they made the improvements that they need to make. They had offensive issues from last year. They go and get the Ole Miss OC to come over there, bought in. Now he's running their offense there. But the quarterback situation is still a little bit broken with them, with Jake Garcia. He's throwing too many interceptions. He has an 8-12 touchdown to interception ratio this year. I just haven't really been on board of betting any of the Army games. I think there is an overvaluation with this Army team, but like you said, who they played? They played Lehigh, FAU, Rice, Temple, Tulsa, and UAB.
And I want to clarify something too, like, which is, I think is important. Like when they're like a massive favorite, right? Like against a UAB where they totally outclass them, those teams that can't match up a little bit in the trenches against Army are going to get destroyed. And that's why I go back to the Rice game, Guns. I really felt like that was a spot. I felt like Rice was the team that could really give them a good game. It was like a very disappointing result for me, because I think I had 7.5 with Rice. It was right in sort of the area that I want to try to bet against Army, is that 7 to 10 point favorite range, where it's like you still got a team that can compete, and they just weren't able to compete. That so far is really the only one this year that's like, that's been in that range. And because if you go back, like Lehigh, 31-point favorite, those are the types of games where if Army's running the ball and doing their thing, they can pretty much name the score.
Yep.
UAB 28-point favorite. I mean, so this one is unfortunately, I'm not confident enough in East Carolina to want to take those points, but I will look at like down the road, that Air Force game I think is here this year. I think Air Force is that's a campus game in Army. That might be the spot maybe to jump in and play against Army because Air Force knows them well. So I'm going to pass here, and maybe out of the, in 2 weeks which would be Army's next game, when Air Force comes to town, that might be the spot that I try to go against Army.
I also like the situation here for ECU too, because they're coming off a bye. Usually if you get a bye before you have to play one of these triple option teams, if you are a well-coached program, you are prepared to go into this spot to go face a triple option. But the schedule doesn't give them any favors going down the road for Army. They have this East Carolina game, then they have a bye, then they have Air Force, and granted, Air Force is having a down year, but it still will be a tough game. Then they have to go to North Texas. That's an interesting situation there from an offensive perspective. I'd love to see what the total is for that one. And then Notre Dame, you get a bye, and then Notre Dame in the Bronx after that. And that's going to be a huge game for both teams in that one, because they should be both ranked when they go into that game. We'll see. But yeah, interesting game there for Army. And yes, that is a beautiful campus. That was a nice little drive I took to upstate New York to go look at that one. It was quite a scene. I didn't go to the football. I saw the football stadium, I think, in the back, but I didn't go. Real quiet out there too. It's pretty little secluded area out there in New York. Let's go to a bigger game here, shall we? We've talked about the nitty gritty. Let's go into a little SEC action. We got Bama. I think Kalen DeBoer, they're ready to run a coup on him and get Nick Saban back. So just the way they've been playing last couple of weeks, kind of alarming since the second half of that UGA game. And then you got a Tennessee team kind of in a similar boat. We don't know who these teams are. Any thoughts on Bama versus Tennessee, Trick?
Guns, I went long on the Army pick. I'm going to keep it short here. This was one of the easiest throwouts for me this week.
Absolutely.
I don't do a ton with the SEC, and Tennessee is a team that I kind of wanted to bet against for a couple weeks. I made a good case for Arkansas the week Arkansas beat them, but now I just feel like if you wanted to fade Tennessee, I feel like you had two chances to do it: Arkansas and Florida. I feel like you're a little bit late to the party at this point. Today, today's probably the day they come out and give an effort, but I am not confident in saying that. So just a hard pass for me right there.
I wrote in my notes the same thing for both teams. I said, who is Tennessee? And I'll start with that one. Last 3 weeks, they have been held under 400 yards of total offense and haven't scored more than 25 points. They scored 23 versus Florida, and I thought Florida was a weaker team. Maybe Florida's on the up and up, and we're going to start buying on the Gators. Then the same thing with Bama. I said, who is Bama? This team hasn't been the same since collapsing against UGA in the second half, losing to Vandy, narrowly escaping South Carolina. South Carolina is just that team that will get a lead on you late, and then they'll poop their pants and give it up in the fourth quarter. They've done that twice. They did it with LSU, and they did it with this team here in Bama. Both Bama and Tennessee, too, have lost the yardage battle in back-to-back games. They're coming from similar spots. Both of these teams want to establish the run, but they're up against good rush defenses. Both have good passing defenses, but Bama has the edge in the passing game with Milroe. 11.2 yards per attempt, 264 passing yards per game. These teams meet every year with Bama having the edge in the rivalry, 16-1 straight up, 13-4 ATS. Last year, the line was -9 in Tuscaloosa. Now it's -6 for Bama. There's not enough a line shift for me to even get an indicator on where it's going. They just basically treated it like the same game last year. I have no play on this one. We need to figure out who these teams are, and Bama and Tennessee are both in the same situation. That the mask will come off today. It's almost Halloween. We'll see what happens in this game. Don't touch it. Just watch, take notes, and maybe there's better opportunities down the road for this. Let's talk about this game. I'm a little bit scared. I'm always scared every week, every time Notre Dame has a game, because every opponent plays their best game versus the Irish. And now they get a double-digit favorite here on a neutral site, Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Kind of feels like a home game for Georgia Tech, but nonetheless, the line is moving towards the Notre Dame side, which is giving indicators that this is probably going to be a Notre Dame blowout. Nothing I am willing to touch with a 10-foot pole. But I'll pass it to you, Mr. ACC. What do you think about Notre Dame versus Georgia Tech?
So I'm just kind of scrolling here because I'm pretty sure Haynes King is out, but then I heard that wasn't like certain to be the case. So I wanted to see if I'll talk about just Georgia Tech in general. So I've been very anti Georgia Tech this year, especially since they won that first game and really inflated their profile by beating Florida State, which really in hindsight, that doesn't, Florida State on a neutral now doesn't seem like that impressive of a win.
No.
I had a nice bet on Syracuse when Georgia Tech came here. I was at that game, and that was a deceiving result. Georgia Tech was far worse. They really got kind of blown out in that game, and a couple special teams miscues allowed them to come back, get back into it. Mm-hmm. Ended up losing that game by 3 guns in a game that they really were just dominated in. Mm-hmm. So, I think you can kind of go down the list here as I try to pull it up, just, down the list of games that they've played. Duke, they win by 10, late score in that game to get it to 10. I believe I think they covered like 9.5 in that game. I was on North Carolina last week, and that was just disgusting to lose. UNC had a great number. I had 5.5, got in early in the week, got in at the right time. I think it went off like 3.5. And granted, I mean, it took a little bit of good fortune to get back into that situation, but for Georgia Tech to cover that game with the late run, right, like after they needed 1 yard to basically just put it on ice, that's deceiving. So that's kind of where I'm at with Georgia Tech. Like, I think they're a very deceiving 5-2. Not only is like maybe their record is what it's supposed to be, Guns, but the margin at which they're winning these games or not losing these games to me is deceiving. And I would not be surprised if this is where they just take one on the chin and just Notre Dame just kind of blows them out. It'd be Notre Dame or pass for me here. I have zero interest in betting on Georgia Tech. I'm still just looking for spots to play against this team.
Yeah, I think it's a telling story when you see him as a 14, 15 point favorite here, which is in Georgia, which you would think there's going to be a lot of Yellow Jacket fans out there. But Notre Dame fans travel.
The sidewalk alum are everywhere for Notre Dame. They are.
I've been to a lot of Notre Dame road games myself, especially when they're close to the area. We outnumber a lot. The fans outnumber the home team more often than not. They're just as loud as the student section.
I mean, listen, Central New York is all Syracuse fans. And when Notre Dame came here to the Dome 2 years ago, it was like 50-50. It was 50-50. And you never see that at a Cuse game. No one wants to come to Syracuse for a game, right? Like it's Syracuse fans. Like no road fans really like want to come to Central New York. It's like in the winter. It's not the best. Probably there was at least 50% Notre Dame fans for that game. They are very rarely on the East Coast going to not have a presence in the stadium. And it's not even it's at Mercedes-Benz. I give Georgia Tech 0 home court edge here. I did that on the Wager Talk show the other day. I'm doing so many college basketball previews right now that this is the 3rd time this week I've said home court in regard to a football game. 0 home field edge for Georgia Tech.
Hey, we got college football's coming around the corner here. Beginning in November, we're going to be grinding a lot of college basketball. It's going to be electric. I don't know how I'm going to fit it all into my schedule, but I'll figure it out. Georgia's I don't have a play on this one. Both teams like to run the ball. Both teams have good rush defenses to stop it. The total's at 49.5, which is the highest total.
That's a little deceiving, Guns. Yeah. I don't think Georgia Tech's rush defense is that good. Syracuse was able to get pushed there, and no one thought that they would in that game. And UNC moved the ball for fun once they got going last week. So I have questions about that Georgia Tech defense. Could be exposed here.
This could be you are correct. As I'm looking at the numbers now, Georgia State run team put 5.2 yards per carry on them. You said UNC last week put up 5.9 yards per carry against them. So, I mean, Syracuse 4.2. They did hold Louisville, but Louisville has struggled. I think that the rush defense has improved, obviously, get the defensive coordinator from Duke to kind of hone in and focus on getting that rush defense a lot better than they are. But they're facing an animal in the run game, 1-2 punch with Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love. These guys can run, and of course Riley Leonard can run on his feet too. He's been running the ball a lot and being very elusive. Could be a very big challenge here in Mercedes-Benz stadiums. I'm willing to watch. I just thought the total was kind of interesting to talk about. 49.5, highest total that Notre Dame has seen all year. The lowest total, but it's the lowest total that Georgia Tech has seen all year, and the biggest dog that they've been. So I couldn't get there, and I lean towards the Notre Dame side. Maybe a good first half look. We'll see. I don't think Notre Dame, knowing they've been punched in the mouth by Northern Illinois, that was kind of their humbling, and they've just been cooking along. And I think they continue to run through this gauntlet right up to the Army game. And, they got Navy as well, but it's going to be very interesting here in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. All right, I'm going to skip around some of these other games here because we're running low on time, but I want to get some of these big games. Michigan going on the road to face Illinois here in Memorial Stadium, I believe it's called there in Champaign, Illinois. Big game for both of these teams. Of course, Illinois almost dropping it against Purdue after a great first half cashing. I'm glad I took the first half and not the full game. And then Michigan, you know what they're going to do. They're going to go in there. They're going to run the ball. I lean towards the over on this one, 44.5. I think I've said it on a bunch of shows already, but the Michigan defense is susceptible in the pass. Illinois likes to pass the ball. Michigan loves to run the ball, and Illinois loves to give up runs. What are your thoughts on this one, Trick?
Yeah, I'm pretty much in just complete agreement. The total felt low, and those would be the reasons why. I really don't have a ton to add there. These are two teams that I haven't really targeted much this year, but a mid to low 40s total in this game. I mean, Michigan, if they're running the ball with any sort of effectiveness, which they should, they're scoring probably mid 20s here at least. Yeah. Do we think Illinois is just getting trashed in this game? The spread kind of suggests no, 4.5. Right. So I'm kind of with you. Maybe Michigan team totals on the right side of 24. I think I'm seeing 23.5. Maybe that's the way to go. But I think they're going to run the ball effectively, and they should get their total.
Yeah, absolutely. You see the back-to-back weeks versus Purdue and Penn State that Illinois played. They gave up 239 total yards rushing in each one of those games. They've been gashed by running teams too. Kansas gashed them. Miami, Ohio gashed them. So this team is susceptible in the run game, and that is exactly what Michigan wants. There's going to be big runs in this game, and I just think it's going to be scoring efficiently down the field. Don't forget, Illinois was a 17.5-point dog last year versus Michigan, and now they're a 3.5-point dog, 3-point dog at home. Let's go to the next game, though. Let's go to some this is a good one. I like this one. LSU versus Arkansas, Razorback Stadium, Fayetteville, Arkansas. 7 p.m. is the kick on this one. I'm on the Arkansas side. There's no other way I'm going. I'm wearing the hat for a reason. I love Arkansas. I took their team total win over. I knew Sam Pittman was going to be cooking. I knew they upgraded at the quarterback position and getting Taylon Green, and then they got Jaquindon Jackson too from Utah and made their backfield a lot better without KJ Jefferson and the running back from last year. But what are your thoughts here on LSU versus Arkansas?
Yeah, I don't disagree. Feels like the home run spot for Arkansas. They have all sorts of good trends in Pittman's favor in Fayetteville at night. I think he's 6-0 straight up at night or something like that. Or like as an underdog, like all of them are straight up wins. 7-1 coming off of a bye. You have LSU is in a very difficult spot after playing Ole Miss last week. Another thing that I did a show yesterday with Matt Grissom, who's an Arkansas guy. Like he's a great source of info for college football, but also specifically Arkansas football, lives down there and goes to a lot of Arkansas games. And something he said that I think is a really important point when it comes to this game is their injury report's as light as it's been all year, right? Like I think this is as clean as the Arkansas injury report has been all year, really, like since the beginning of the year. And then you look at Arkansas, what are they, 4 plays away from being undefeated right now, right? Yeah. Like they lose a double overtime game to Oklahoma State. That Texas A&M game could have gone either way. It was a game they led in the fourth quarter, I believe, and had chances to win. What's the spread here? If Arkansas is 5-1 or unbeaten, they're probably a slight favorite. So you definitely are getting value, in my opinion, with +3. Guns, I don't know why I didn't play this. Like, and now if I can get a 3 at some point today, because I only have 2 plays on my card so far. If I can get a 3, this might be the third one. This makes all the sense in the world to me.
I got the 3 on Monday. So when I saw the 3, I just found it and grabbed it. That's why I'm on 5-1 ATS on the year for Arkansas, 3-1 straight up, 4-0 ATS as a dog. And then you have LSU team that's 2-6 as an away favorite under Brian Kelly. And you got to know where they're coming from. They're coming from that Ole Miss win in OT. It was a big win, highs of highs. And then who do they have next week? They got a little bit of a situational sandwich here with Texas A&M. Playoff implications on the line there for LSU. They're not. I don't know if they're going to come out of here with a W here. I like Arkansas on the money line too. I think they get it done. This team is better than what you think they are, and they kind of proved it when they played Tennessee 2 weeks ago. This team can play. This team can win. They a couple outliers, like you said. Those 2 losses have, you look at you break down that game. They lost to Oklahoma, but they were plus 263 net yard average in that game. They dominated in the yardage, and they dominated in the yardage against Texas A&M with plus 82 net yards. So yeah, this team can play. So this is the perfect spot to put on Arkansas.
I'm gonna wait here just because it's like game day now, and it's like I kind of want to see how stuff plays out early for me. But even a juiced 3, I think I'm good with for Arkansas on this one. I'd obviously like to get 3, but my numbers make Arkansas the favorite. I don't know. I really don't know why I didn't bet this early in the week. Like, it's just, probably because it's outside of my like comfort conferences, if you will, like where I've really focused my attention. But I could not talk anyone off Arkansas. It makes all the sense in the world. And I think they should be favored. So
absolutely, there you go. I agree 100%. Let's go into the we'll make this the last game here today. It's the biggest game on the board. It is Georgia versus Texas. It's going to be thumping there in prime time in Austin, Texas. 7:30 is the kick. I have a thought on this game, but I'll start with you, Adam Trigg.
So my thoughts for this game, this is one of those games where I think Texas was probably the right side early in the week at like 3.5. I actually wouldn't even talk someone off Texas now, especially if it's come down to 4.5. My concern is it's the big game. You get like the massive effort from Georgia that they really have. They haven't really given that like max, like huge effort at this point.
Right.
But I do have a theory about that. I think, Kirby Smart in his press conference earlier this week said in reference to Texas's defense, he said something along the lines of, those look like our good defenses, right? Like talking in the past tense, which is not what you want to hear from your coach when you're the number 5 team in the country. He was talking as if his team was like 3-3, and he was reflecting on the good times at Georgia. Like, this is a team that's still in the top 5. That's a little concerning right there to me. And it kind of goes back to, like, I guess the way I looked at Georgia prior to the season. I didn't think that they were a Georgia team that was going to get back to the national championship game again. I felt like their window was a couple years ago, and now, definitely in the mix, in my opinion. But to me, this Georgia team is a slight step down from like the top teams in college football right now. So for that reason, I guess I lean Texas. But Guns, if they come out and play the best game of their year, that's kind of how these primetime games have been going, right? Like, you have Oregon last week, LSU home run effort against Ole Miss. Oregon comes out and beats Ohio State. The Georgia Bama game, Bama was destroying them, and then Georgia comes back. Like, Bama, great effort. They lose to Vandy next week. So these big, huge one-off spots are so hard to handicap. And I really wouldn't give you a hard time if you're like, Trick, I'm going to take the points with Georgia. I mean, it's just one of those games that I think is very, very difficult because of the magnitude of the game. The spot makes it tough to handicap, in my opinion.
Yeah, the way I treated this game is you talked about the Georgia defense, and I got stats on that one. 22nd in opposing scoring, 39th in opposing yards per game, 29th in opposing third down conversion percentage, 71st in opposing red zone score percentage too. This is not your normal numbers from a Georgia team. And then on the Texas side, they look a lot like the old school Georgia teams. They're first in opposing scoring, first in opposing yards per game, first in opponent yards per play, 8th in opposing third down conversion percentage, and they're number 1 in opposing red zone percentage. Now, take it with a grain of salt. They faced the 28th toughest schedule versus UGA, who's faced the 3rd toughest schedule. But I like the first half here because Texas has outscored their opponents 146-22 in the first half, leading by an average margin of 20.7 points per game, where UGA always comes out slow as molasses in the first half, only outscoring their opponents 57-49 with an average lead of 1.6 points per game. And then Georgia has outscored opponents in the second half 96-51 with an average lead of 9 points per game in the second half. So I think if we could try to see how this goes, I'm going to give the pick out as Texas first half. I got it at -2.5. There might be -3, 3.5 on the board now. Heavily weighted number in the first half for Texas. When this line opened, it was a 3.5, 3-point line, and the first half was 3. It was exactly the same spread as the full game, which is a high indicator you're looking at a first half here. And I just think there is an opportunity to maybe thread the needle a little bit too. If Texas goes up big in the first half, we could probably jump on Georgia in the second half. That's probably how I thread it, because knowing that Georgia is a second half team versus a Texas team that likes to put their foot on the gas pedal early and then kind of just pump the brakes like watching Usain Bolt sprint in the semifinals, take the last leg off. But that's going to be how I like this one. Texas first half is the official play, and we'll see what happens in the second half.
Yeah, Guns, okay. You could always come back with Texas second half if it doesn't work out. And if it does, you take your money and go do something else or just enjoy the second half of the game, which I'm sure will be electric because it's just
it's going to be a fun game to
goes now.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun game to watch. It's going to have that. Hopefully, it has that same vibe as Ohio State and Oregon last week, because I thought that was a damn good game too. But that's going to do it here for the Saturday Mornings with Guns Picks. Adam Trigger, I appreciate you joining me here, talking a little ball.
Do I have time for a quick best bet?
Absolutely. Give me your best bet. I'll give you the floor.
I've only played 2 things in college football today. The one I like the most, I can't give here. I don't need a phone call from Kelly Stewart or Johnny Detroit for giving out the play that's up for sale on Wager Talk. So what I'm going to do as my computer dies and I plug it in so I don't die in the middle of the breakdown is give you the other one. The other game I played today is Ohio +4. Real quick with this Ohio team. Last week, they were my max play of the week, best bet of the week on the Ohio money line. It got there. It should have been easier. They had a 24-0 lead at halftime in that game, Guns, and they didn't come out of the locker room, went to sleep. And pretty much needed a big field goal and a big stop to escape 27-25. I got to imagine that that's hammered into their heads this week. Hey, football's 2 halves, 2-half game. You can't just come out and coast through the second half. I think they're less likely to do that against Miami of Ohio, who's a little bit of a higher profile team in that conference. What I don't think the odds makers are taking into consideration with Ohio, and something I didn't at the beginning of the year either, because they lost a lot of guys on defense. I didn't think this Ohio team would be as good as they were last year, but that running tandem of Tyus and Navarro is really, really good. They have an unreal chemistry. Of course, Tyus comes over from Northwestern. Parker Navarro now the quarterback, and they are running the ball at will. I think Navarro had something like 150 last week or something. Tyus at another 95-yard rushing output. He had like 200 when he came up here to play Syracuse earlier this year. And Miami of Ohio's biggest strength is their front 7. And if Ohio can get a little push in the run game, that secondary is not great. And that Miami of Ohio offense has not been efficient this year. I know a lot of people thought it was going to be with Gabbert back. Hasn't been great. I think that number's inflated, Guns. I took 4 with the Ohio Bobcats. I won't be surprised if they get another win this week.
Beautiful stuff. And make sure you go check it out. Like he says, he has a play. His best bet is on Wager Talk. You can go get that right now. And the dude's money. The dude's a well-versed, intelligent college football and college basketball guy. Just check out, and all the stuff that he does. Baseball, he's all over the place. Go check him out on Wager Talk and on the Wager Talk channel, and also check him out on wagertalk.com and get his plays. That's going to do it here for the Saturday Mornings with Guns Picks. Let's enjoy some games, and let's have ourselves a damn Saturday. And as always, let's cash some tickets. Let's dominate the board. And as always, let's keep dancing. Yeah, headlines, money.